I want to thank everybody for coming to our metal theft workshop. We have two fabulous, in my opinion, law enforcement officers from the state of Florida. Sergeant Matthew Beebe is from the Polk County Sheriff's Department. He's also on the board of FLEPRU, which is the Florida Law Enforcement Property Recovery Unit, and that's similar to a trade association for law enforcement agents for property crime. And so the different agencies send their officers to training once a year, and they train them on the different laws with property crime. Matt is the state guru, our go-to person for HB 538. And so if anybody hasn't, Matt has it down with the cars and everything else. So he's kind of our go-to guy, and he did a metal theft training yesterday with law enforcement. No, wait a minute. Yeah, that was Friday. With law enforcement, and we had approximately 60 law enforcement officers here for that training. And then with that, they went into the trade show so that they could see another part of the industry, and so that they could get more of an insight of what's going on. And then we have Detective Kelly Burrows. He's with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department. And he gave me his whole bio. Oh my gosh. And his current position is in the Division of Investigations for Scrap Task Force. He's one of the original members of the task force that they set up there. And he was involved in creating an enforcement policy for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. He's also assisted in the creation of enforcement of Municipal Ordinance 185, Part 5 for Duval County, Florida. He currently conducts inspections of all the secondary metals recyclers within Duval County and conducts local, state, and federal investigations related to ferrous and non-ferrous metal thefts. And Kelly is the go-to person there. They have a really great team in their jurisdiction, and has worked really well with the state association / ISRI. And he is also the go-to person in that area. And we collaborate a lot, and we've worked together on making the Florida law, and continue to work together as a team. So we brought them here so that they could share what we've done.
So I know you've had a long convention. I know this is like the last thing for today, and then everybody gets to have fun tonight. So hopefully we can make this fun and interactive. Basically, we're trying to figure out what the current image of the recyclers is as far as from the law enforcement side. Which you may or may not know, and I can only speak from Florida's perspective, obviously. The issues in working with law enforcement, which is what I understand y'all are really concerned about, which is a good thing. Find ways of making contacts with us and identifying issues to deter or enhance any kind of cooperation. All right, so I know that Gary has been doing some liaison work with y'all for a while. He's very good at it, and he's been doing a lot of positive things all across the country. One of the images that he uses is the Sanford & Son salvage. I'm here to tell you that most of the people that I'm working with now weren't born when that was on TV, okay? So they don't know, all right? The image of the bad guys that I've been dealing with, they see you as a cash industry, so they're just gonna keep bringing their product to you, all right? Law enforcement at times sees you as the bottom picture is the black hole of all their stolen stuff heading to you, all right? And obviously the image that we're trying to get to is you're a professional industry, you're providing a valuable service, and probably 90% of the more your customers are just normal Joe Blow, just trying to bring their stuff in and make some money out of some other things, okay? And all of that's fine. Kelly, have you had any difference on any of that?
Sergeant Beebe on that. The thing that I see with law enforcement is that they don't understand the world that you guys operate in. As an example, I'll use a copper aluminum radiator for an air conditioning. As you look at it, you're looking at that as aluminum, you're looking at it as copper, that's a commodity. That's how you make your living. For us as law enforcement, we look at it from the context of that's a potential crime, that's a piece of evidence, that's a victim.
I don't know if it's on.
We look at that as a potential crime or a victim. Okay, so it's our responsibility, and I think it's, when I say ours, I think it's the industry and it's us as law enforcement, is that we have to understand each other's context. It's my job to go out with the recyclers in Duval County and ensure that they help them understand how I look at this. And then through that dialogue, they help me understand what they do. I think only through that sort of a dialogue that we can bridge a gap with each other and make this thing work together.
Okay. How many of you have heard the statement from either side of the fence, being the recyclers or law enforcement, it's us versus them? Anybody? Okay. It's very common. Why work with a competitor? Sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? That you would work with another scrapyard in your area, in your county, in your city, within your next door neighbor, whatever. Believe it or not, that's what you're going to end up doing. Okay? Not sharing price information, not selling commercial space, anything like that. But the best way to get to us is in mass, okay, and vice versa. If something is being stolen and sent to you, then you turn it away. Where's it go? Goes to the guy next door, right? And then they're making more money for doing the wrong thing, and you're doing the right thing and getting penalized by it. That's why you've got to start working and making your partnerships out of this. This has been a long process with Rose and I, and traveling the state and trying to continue that process. Why doesn't law enforcement do more than what they are now? Anybody have that problem? Okay. I'm going to ask one other question before I keep rolling. Who in here has somebody in law enforcement that you can pick up the phone anytime, day or night, and have them answer? Okay, that's a lot more than what I expected. You actually have to reach out to them. We have people coming and going. Most of you, well, I know like Rose, she got the business from her family, so she's grown up in the business. It's her life. That's what she does. When I started 24 years ago, fraud was the new thing. Nigerian fraud and those newfangled things called fax machines had just come out where you could get one in your house. All right, so that started that whole trend. It wasn't until a few years ago that metal theft became the forefront of the issue. Anybody hear a CompStat out of New York? Okay, for lack of a better term, it's cops on dots. All right, wherever the problem is, if it's car theft, if it's burglaries of houses, if it's robbery, whatever, that's where all the resources get sent. Okay, so when that happens, when metal theft became the forefront, they started sending people into metal theft and going, you will combat this, you'll deal with it. The problem with that is in our state, you're under 538. 538 is also the we buy golds of the world. Okay? Needless to say, their lobbyists and their mentality as far as overall performance is against law enforcement. They don't want to give any information. They want to take the stuff. They want to melt it as quickly as possible. So it created a hard fight for y'all. You're under 538 Part 2, and again, by slowly working with Rose and figuring some things out, we were able to get the laws changed. When I started, this was the transaction ticket. Anybody got a transaction ticket like this? Okay. To me, this was hieroglyphics. I didn't know what it was. All right. I didn't know what Bear Bright was. I didn't know what number 1 copper was. It took me a lot of work and a lot of time to figure that out. Okay. It was about 6 months before I knew what this ticket said. I was able to make some prosecutions off of this and get the guys convicted, but the form we now have looks like that. Okay. I mean, it boils down name, address, vehicle they bring the item in, their tag, their work phone number. If they don't have it and they say they're unemployed, you are not law enforcement. Okay? They say unemployed, unemployed is the answer. They lie to you, I'm not worried about that part of it. Okay? But there's a whole series of things they have to fill out, including the bottom line that says that this stuff is mine and only mine, and if I sell it and it turns out to be stolen, it's all on me. Okay? Have you had any other conflicts like that?
This is one of the problems that when we first started up in Duval County, we had several different variations of this form. I believe that once we decided to go ahead and adopt this form throughout the county and simplified things, is the thing that we in law enforcement, we are conditioned to understand certain things. We spoke about this before the meeting, so I think it's probably important to tell you. Prior to us getting involved with scrap, if you were to go to the state attorney's office, if you were to talk to officers, they would look at things as if you guys were no different than a pawn transaction, okay? We all know That is not the case. You operate differently, the requirements are different, it's a completely different animal altogether. However, when I would go file a case against somebody, it was not uncommon that I have a state attorney ask me, well, where's the pawn transactions? Like, well, I don't have any pawn transactions because this is a secondary metal recycler transaction. So I'd find myself quite frequently going over there and having to give them an impromptu class exactly what you guys do and how your industry operates. That's problematic for us, especially like Matt said, we have a lot of officers that are brand new, they don't know what they're doing. They're even conditioned to think like that it's pawn. So I constantly have conversations with them, explaining to them this is not, and help educate them and help them become informed about what this is. This form here, it could be a little bit better, but it's a good start for to get things standardized in the industry, at least in the state of Florida. So I would suggest that if you can get your agency in your prospective counties to get some standardization, that's the path that's going to help you guys get to where you need to be. Because right now you have a lot of people that don't understand what you do. I'm talking about from the enforcement side and the state attorney side.
Danielle.
Does that require state legislation to get a statewide form like that?
Yes.
County by county, the law enforcement and recyclers had to go together to get legislation to get standards.
This was part of the 07 legislation and went into effect in 08. And the fun part about this particular form, again, just showing you how people don't understand things. The recyclers of Florida are regulated under the Department of Revenue for licensing. This form is mandated under the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. This is the same basic form as a pawn shop form. The only thing they did was change some of the material as far as being able to put in metal.
And I think it went into effect October of 08.
That's correct. That's correct.
Lost like 80% of the value of their inventory. So stolen copper went from being worth $4 a pound to $1 a pound.
Yes, ma'am.
At the same time, the new law went into effect. So it really did curtail that. You know, both things happening at the same time.
Matt, though, explain to them the ownership part because, you know, we're from all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And it really will protect people.
Yeah.
And explain the prosecution part because that's going to be integral for everyone.
Okay, basically the way that this form is set up and the way that the statute's set up in Florida is as long as you comply with this form and fill it out completely, you are not held criminally or civilly liable for the transaction. Okay, so the ownership statement at the bottom is saying that I, Matthew Beebe, own the item. Okay, I'm selling it to you, that I have it free and clear of any liens or whatever else. It's all me. So if it's scrap, if it's whatever, you're just saying, you own this, right? Yep. And off it goes. Okay? If you don't complete the form properly, then you open yourself up. So it's important that the form be done properly. Okay? Hold on. You've had 2 questions so far. This is on the non-ferrous.
Every non-ferrous transaction you have to fill it out.
Yes, except for aluminum cans, I should specify.
Okay, and is there enforcement as far as, so you said you open yourself up if you don't fill it out properly or don't fill it out if there's a case on it. Is it enforced to make sure that all are filling it out at all times? The same for make sure, or just when there's a case that comes up?
I will give you a definite maybe on that. Okay? I'm in Polk County. He's up in Duval. Okay? Everybody is slightly different. Again, when you have the rotation in law enforcement that we have, again, with most of them, I was in scrap for 3 years before I was promoted. I've been promoted for 3 years now. But in the 3 years that I've been out, there have been 3 other people in my position since I left it. Okay? So it depends how fast you have somebody go through, how fast they learn it, and how many inspections they do. Okay?
Is that submitted to you every day, or is that done by the dealer?
Well, as of July of this past year, this is now electronically submitted, and that's because of the help of the Florida Recyclers Association in mandating that. Before that, we actually had to go get them when we needed them. And we had to call everybody and fax everything or send emails or, you know, whatever else we had to do to track things down. So now we have them sent to us. And then we can start looking at trends from there.
And to clarify that, if you have your software, your scrap software, you electronically transfer that information, based on, with all of this information, and your transference has to go. You know, the iColor, the aircolor thing. That all gets transferred. So, you know, if you are still doing manually, then yes, you can fill it in. But with the ownership information for all of us that own, you know, that for your purchase transactions, the key part is the language of the ownership, because that, when you take it to the prosecution, then they will follow through, they won't make it a no bill.
Right.
One of the other things I'd like to add about this oath of ownership that's really important, it's actually the other side of the coin of what Matt said, is that when you look at that oath of ownership, what that allows me to do for you is it allows me to charge, this is the state of Florida, it allows me to charge that individual with false verification of ownership to a secondary metal recycler. What does that mean to you? That means that you become a victim at that point, and you can go through litigation to get compensated. So I tell our recyclers, we actually endorsed this one. We accepted it as our approved transaction form in Duval County. So we required that all the yards in Duval County have this form. And that's what I expressed to them, is that, look, this helps me protect you from the criminal as well. So once again, it's just another way that we try to build a partnership with the recyclers out there. Absent of that language that's on that transaction form, I have a hard time taking a case to the state attorney's office and proving that I have a false verification of ownership to a secondary metal recycler. We have that law in our Florida state statutes, and this is how we enforce it, is through this.
Mike, got it.
Are there other states that have adopted the same sort of thing, number one? And number two, do you have an estimate of how much time it takes to fill this form out at the end?
Well, time,
I don't know of any state that has our law. There's all kinds of variations of our law. And once you have your software, it doesn't take any time. When you go in the next morning, we have to transfer it before 10 a.m. You press the button, you upload the file, boom, it's done in 2 minutes.
So you don't fill this out?
You don't, no, this was only
No.
if you do everything manually, well, you have to. But this was the format of information that you need. And then if they find someone that through the electronic transfer, they come to the yard and then we print out the whole transaction with their signature, their thumbprint, their driver's license.
But I'm sorry.
okay.
Do they actually sign this form?
They can sign it electronically on your software. They can even take an electronic or digital thumbprint, and that's fine. We don't endorse any particular software product. I can tell you that the product that my agency uses, that if you do it manually because you have a mom and pop store, there's a way to do that online, okay? So that each ticket is automatically done and finished right there and already in the system, so you don't have to worry about 10 o'clock tomorrow, or if at 1 o'clock today your system crashes and you can't get on the internet, all your tickets are already up, okay? There are many other software programs out there, you know, that can do all of these things. Rose has a different program, but still can upload to our system. Okay, the whole thing is the compatibility issue. And we worked on that before we went ahead and tried to get this mandated. Go ahead.
You implemented this form, did you create that crime, falsifying information to the structure?
That was already in effect as far as that law, but the verbiage was changed slightly to make it much easier for us to go ahead and prosecute. Because let's say Kelly gives me something and then I sell it, okay, but he gets the money back, it's now been falsified. Okay, that's enough for me to go ahead and be arrested, all right? Because it's his stuff, not mine.
So
Okay.
to answer your question, you can get that language in your bill.
You can introduce it. Go ahead.
Is the information transmitted to a state agency or to the local law enforcement?
It's transmitted to the local sheriff's office in Florida. Go ahead. The statute is 538, Part 2, and you can actually go to myflorida.com And if you just hit 538 or Florida state statutes, it'll bring all of the stuff up for you as far as that goes.
ISRI has, on our state law section, state law page, two codes.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Just a question of clarification. This is only for transactions where metal is being brought to the scrap yard, not metal take that there.
Correct. This is basically any transaction with the actual public, not business to business. Go ahead, sir. Yes, sir. We don't release anything. And in fact, when the form is transferred electronically, the prices aren't transmitted to us. It's not until we actually determine a crime has occurred on a transaction that we can come to you and say, go ahead and give me the actual form. You have 24 hours to produce that form, and then we go ahead and go from there. But again, all of the yards in my area, and I'm sure in Kelly's area, are extremely cooperative. So I've never waited 24 hours for a form. They'll just bang, there it is. So, go ahead.
Back to kind of the theme of this, instead of just the form per se, we're talking about working together in the industry. You mentioned earlier turnover of law enforcement. I mean, how important is it for the industry, recyclers, and law enforcement in educating new officers about the use of the form, the importance, and going back to the earlier question about how is this enforced, is it dotting the i's, crossing the t's? How does it work with the industries and the importance of talking together in these relationships?
Well, the training has to be continuous. It can't stop. I've traveled to 30 different counties out of the 67 so far. I anticipate going to some other places. Miami-Dade is now looking to have us come down and have me go talk with them for a little bit. So we'll see how well that works out. That's a very tough nut to crack because it's like their own country there. Well, when we got these laws passed, just to tell you, they have until July of this year to actually determine if they're going to pass a county ordinance or not. Everybody else had to have it in effect 2 years ago. So, you know, it is what it is, and you know, life is good. But yeah, we constantly have to train. In fact, with FLEPRU, we actually conduct metal theft training every year to go back over certain things. We're just now getting to the point that we have enough people that we may start breakout sessions. Before we would just have basically a room like this and go through it every year for about 2 hours. So it's a lot of turnover. You constantly have different agencies. Is yours, is a detective a promotion?
No, detectives aren't a promotion. It's just a lat move. But we have the same problem with Duval County. Those of you who are familiar with the Navy, I'm one of the plank owners that helped start this thing up in Duval County, and I've stayed because I really don't have a desire to go anywhere else. But we have turnover, and training these guys, I would say, and this is a very conservative number, you're talking at least 6 months to a year before a detective that works nothing but metal theft investigations has even an idea of how to do a case and even has an idea of how your industry works. They're never going to be where you are at, but it's just the nature of the beast that we deal with. We have people that come and go, so it's something we have to combat, and unfortunately, it's something that you guys have to combat too, because you have to establish those relationships with those officers and build upon them. So it's a challenge.
Go ahead, sir.
What's the system you're utilizing for the data?
As far as when somebody transmits the data to us, we have our own internal system, and it's secured. Everything that's transmitted to us is through CJNet, which is a state-secured site. It has no access through the public. It's actually part of FCIC, NCIC. So.
How can you actually check with the recyclers to see that they're actually following what they're so you have recyclers that are following along, recyclers that aren't. What are you doing to make sure that and not just going after the theft or the metal theft, but actually culturally.
Well, with the electronic reporting, it's now easier to do that, whereas before we would have to go out and look at everything individually. We can start seeing what the trends are, what's missing and whatnot. We can do spot checks on any given day, but I know that I'm going back this month actually to go back and do some retraining of some folks, and in that we're going to be going out and doing more inspections actually in the field and get that done. So, but yeah, we have to do, supposed to do at least quarterly to biannually, but you go out and you actually spot check different yards. As far as against the yards, not yet, but there's some stuff in the works. So there's one yard that I'm working on actually federally. There's another yard that we're looking at through the state attorney's office, but that's stuff that's in progress, and I can't really get into much detail on that.
Yeah,
Have
you're,
you had
you're
any?
touching on a great point there. It's one of the concerns that a lot of the businesses in Duval County express with me is that we are very proactive in Duval as far as doing these inspections and going out there and making sure there is compliance equitably across the board. Obviously, their concern is, what are our neighboring agencies doing? Is Baker County doing anything? Is St. John's, Nassau County, Clay County? That's a concern because their concern, and it's a justifiable one, is if Duval County isn't doing all this enforcement and compliance, well, guess where their business goes? It goes to the neighboring counties. I understand that. We have started, I'm going to call it an outreach program. We actually go and we talk to the other agencies. We get them involved. I think we've done a really good job of getting some of our neighboring counties involved with us and coming and doing some, collaborating with us, going on some of the inspections to see how we do that stuff so we can establish that uniformity in our area. So that's a challenge because you have different administrations that have different, like he said, they're looking at certain dots that are big in their communities. If scrap isn't one of them, well, guess what? The attention of that is going to be a little less. So it's a challenge for us to make sure that other agencies are as involved as we are and we have a blanket and uniform enforcement of the law. But I can tell you that in the last 2 years, that is starting to happen up in Duval County.
Go ahead.
It gives, well, Matt and I are the ones that started that whole thing. It brings people together, and it made the us and them guards down. It made them go away really in our group. I'm going to say our group because it has become contagious at this point. So our very first meeting and I had Matt speak, and Hillsborough County came, Polk County came, and then that was our first meeting. We started doing this in 2008, and we decided that was 2008, didn't we?
Yeah, it was 2008.
And so, my greatest fear was, with ISRI, it's a different playing field, I have friends from all over the country, and if I need something, I'm not going to call my competitor up the street, I'm going to call my friend that's in another state. So, it was pretty scary bringing all these intense competitors together in the room. And I will tell you, the first time, nobody would talk to each other, and it was pretty weird. Of course, we had Florida Recyclers years ago in the 80s when we had our very first metal theft law, and ISRI had to be involved. We didn't have, and we started Florida Recyclers Association because of all kinds of internal things in the state. Here we've come full circle, and where we were in the 80s. So, I was a veteran to that, so I already knew that it was going to be really tough. And so I had Danish and coffee outside, so if you wouldn't come, and when everybody just stood against the wall, and then there's me and Matt, and, so I kind of went around and thanked everybody for coming, and it was the hostess, and the second meeting was, they knew that they didn't want to come, as in the dealers didn't want to come, but they knew that they had to come because it was in their best interest to come. So then the guards were letting down, and instead of the Danish and coffee being thrown away, people were coming earlier to visit and talk about the situation. Then it was getting out in Fleet Brew, and then we met Kelly, and then Kelly brought in the northern area. Then the other dealers brought in their law enforcement because we said, bring in your metal theft detectives. They need to come to the meetings, they need to come to the meetings. So then we started building relationships. So we have 2 meetings a year. We have one that's strictly business, but law enforcement comes, and we do the business. We talk about what's going on, what are our problems, what do we need to fix, what do we not need to fix. We have our law, we don't really want to open it back up, so we're coming to what gentlemen's agreements on, what a definition is, and how do we want to proceed with that, and can we tweak what we send electronically by a note, like batteries. We buy batteries by the pound. Well, batteries now they're the hot spot of being what's stolen. Law enforcement has no idea what 300 pounds of batteries is. They have no clue. So they came to FRA, all of them did, from 11 jurisdictions, and said, how can we solve this? So we decided as a gentleman's agreement is we would go back to our software people and we would ask them if we could put, this means 10 car batteries or 3 boat batteries or whatever it is to help them. And there would be no reason why we wouldn't, because we're all on the same page. And then in June we have fishing and golf, and we have cocktails and we have dinner, and we stay together and we tell outrageous stories on both sides of the fence. And we, this pisses me off about this. This makes me mad about that. And why do you guys do this? Why do you guys do that? And how come you didn't go check him out? Why didn't you do this? And that's when we really came to the table. And that's when we came to the table to fix our law, because the point at the end of the day was it's mental theft, it's a problem, let's come with a solution. Electronic reporting was horrible. As you all know, the industry doesn't want to electronically report. They couldn't understand why we didn't want to give pricing and amounts paid. They think it's completely silly because that's their view. They didn't understand our view. So then, but you have to have relationships to do that. And now we have all the different counties, except for, of course, Dave, all the different counties that come to our meeting. And that's where we got to this. But as people move, then, for us, the dealers sponsor law enforcement to come to our meetings, and we pick up the tab. So I have 4 new metal theft detectives, okay? But before they leave, Jake took over Matt trained Jake and brought Jake to the yard, and Jake went, we explained to him what the different coppers were, and we had this, and they have their toolkit from us that we made. They've got all the coppers, they've got the insulated coppers, they've got the aluminum copper radiator. They have that at Polk County. Y'all have that there. So they're in-house training every new phase. But, and then that's the whole point. You have to see them as partners, not the enemy. And you have to train them, and they have to train us, because it has been eye-opening and an enlightening experience for all of us. And the growth has been the personal growth and the insight of what it takes to get to where we need to be as a community, because we all live together and we all want to be safe, and we all want to protect what we have. It has to start with us. And you're the person that it starts with, and then we grew it to what we have.
Yeah, the thing about it is that I think what happened is it went from something that was very sterile to something that's a little more organic. And because we have those relationships with the businesses, I'm actually getting phone calls saying, hey, this guy or this person brought this in, you might want to look at it. And it's netted some great cases for me. And I can tell you that absent of those relationships, I never would have got those phone calls. So from my perspective and from my agency's perspective, that's the sort of dialogue that is good, that we want. We want that, because an adversary relationship is not good for you, and it's not good for us. We can work together and solve so many more cases and help your industry in a lot of ways.
Go ahead, sir.
You started this when?
We actually started doing all this stuff back around 2007, 2008. The first meeting that I attended with Rose was 2008.
You scooped up a lot of bad guys?
Oh, yes. In fact, since our most recent change, crime is down 50% in metal theft since July of last year. We're averaging a 50% reduction each month. 1 month we were down 75%. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm from Canada, so some of them I know at that point yet. But my question, the difficulty that I see is you have the person who got that,
Yep. Frequent flyers.
But they go, if you're saying it's down, like, my perception in our area, like, it's very frustrating because these people, there's very few consequences. So they get arrested, there's some kind of lane, or, then they're back out, like, so when you say it's down, those people, where do they go? Do they just disappear and go off to another area and cause problems?
Some do, yes, ma'am.
So basically, it's just pushed to another area.
No, some people are just stopping what they're doing. Some people are doing a thing that the term's called aging out, where they're getting tired of going to jail. Quite honestly, that's what it's called. People don't like our jail. My sheriff is Grady Judd. I don't know if any of you know him or not, but they get bologna sandwiches for lunch. The guys do not get underwear. There are no places for them to play basketball. They are taught CPR while they're in there. They get free groups come in to give them religious training and get GEDs and things like that. So we have other things going on, so we don't have the recidivism that we normally would in addition to everything else. But the fact that, again, Kelly and I have been working with state attorneys, the frequent flyers that we have are stopping because the state attorney's like, I've seen this name 4 times now. Yes, you should not give them a deal. And then we go from there. As Daniel will tell you yesterday when we had all law enforcement in here, well, actually in the other room, but we have just as much frustration with our state attorneys as anybody else, okay? We have to meet a thing called probable cause. They meet a thing called beyond a reasonable doubt, okay? And if you put it in general percentages, which is, we only have to get to 51%, they got to get to 98. So there's a big gap between the two. So depending upon their training and expertise in the area and how well they actually write down what they did, makes a difference with the state attorney.
One of the things when I go prosecute these cases, when I go file these cases, look, I level with the attorney. I'm like, look, rusty metal is not sexy. This is not a homicide. This is not a big high profile case, like a whatever. It's just not sexy. I understand that. However, you have to understand what we're talking about here. This is just a spoke in the wheel, okay? Where does this money go to? Why are these people driving down the road stealing stuff? Most of them have drug addiction. So guess what? Now you have it tied to drugs, okay? There's so many different things that this stuff is tied to. So I have to go in there and articulate this and get these people interested in it, these prosecutors interested in it, and make them understand, look, this is more than a stolen air conditioner that ended up at a scrapyard. You have to understand the big picture here. It's the totality of the circumstances here. I have to make it sexy for them to want to prosecute it sometimes because it's just not fun to them. Okay, typically I'm going to go file it with a line attorney that's brand new. The ink is still wet on the diploma on the wall. They walk in there and they're full of they're ready to do something. They're ready to chart and go find Jimmy Hoffa's body and line up the whole mob up here and make a big federal case. Okay, and guess what? Detective Burroughs walks in and I got a metal theft case. You know how demoralizing that is for some of these people? I see it on them. So I have to tell them, look, this is what this is. You're going to cut your teeth in this right here and get them motivated behind that. You got to have detectives out there that can articulate that and kind of get them excited about this and make them understand the big picture here. So I don't know if that's the problem that's going on where you're at, but a lot of times you have a lack of interest. The laws will probably be on the book. You'd probably be surprised if you actually went and looked at the laws in your area. See what's out there. Engage the state attorney. Ask why they're not prosecuting these cases with these laws. It's because the interest is not there. We've tried to do a good job. I've actually gone over there and met with our state attorneys, with division chiefs, and expressed to them, look, this is what we're doing. This is why this is important. These are the laws that we're trying to enforce. What do you need us to do for you to charge them with this crime? What do you need? What is the threshold you want us to meet? And I got them to tell us. I drew a line in the sand, and then now we're doing it for them.
Have them call my sheriff. He'll get rid of them for you. Go ahead, sir. Well, go ahead. Okay. Every judicial circuit is run differently in Florida. My state attorney's office, because we happen to be the main county where our state attorney actually is, and he runs 3 counties, I can go down there. We have a felony intake attorney, and I happen to have known the head of felony intake for 20 years. So we're friends, and I talk to him, and I have beat him to death with this stuff, to the point that I now train his intake attorneys, so that when they get a case, they understand what's coming in, all right? I've also had a meeting with our state attorney, and he understands what's going on now. As far as Jacksonville, I don't know how, if he has the full rotating door. I know that Orlando, they send cases down there, and whatever attorney is up, that's who gets it. And you just spin the wheel and see who's loaded in the barrel, okay? The same problem is in several other counties in Florida, all right? So until you, normally with fraud, there's a specific person. Homicide, there's a specific person. Until we can get that kind of thing going, this is a problem that law enforcement has, okay? As far as with legislatures, they're going to do whatever the people want, or whatever they feel the people want. They don't talk to the state attorney's office that I'm aware of, except for maybe Miss Bondi. Has that been your?
Oh, yeah, it's what it's what the people want. So if the people are screaming, then that's what they're gonna do. So then you have to be proactive at that point and you know, change your law or write your law. But, how I'm sure everybody else's state is, you know, our law came back up because law enforcement was screaming, wasn't our law enforcement, but it was South Florida law enforcement, was screaming about metal theft. And then that's how the first time the law was written. So it wasn't, the scrap recyclers found out much later after it was almost way too late. So then we decided to be proactive and start leading the way instead of the other way around. And then, so when we wrote our law together, law enforcement and the recyclers, then though it was kind of like a no-brainer for the legislators because we were a united force. And then, but they called, when it went to Governor Scott's office, they called Duval County, they called Cole County, they called all the different counties that had signed on, law enforcement had signed on as approving, being on board with the law. He wouldn't sign it until he talked to every law enforcement jurisdiction to see if they really were on board.
Yeah, in 08, the change that went into effect was, for lack of a better term, was against the scrapyards, okay, which is where that form came from and a lot of other changes, because the communication hadn't been built yet. As Rose said, the governor started calling around because the governor ran on a platform of pro-business. He's not going to regulate business. He's not going to do anything to harm business. And this statute did exactly the opposite. It says they will do this, you will do that. You're going to mandate to be electronically reporting, so forth and so on. He just thought that was absolutely insane until he found out the recyclers were actually the ones that were asking for this. Okay, so by working together, we just let the recycling industry go ahead and push it forward. The Florida Sheriff's Association signed on, Fleet Crew signed on, League of Urban Cities. I mean, everybody just walked together and went up and took care of it. So.
But didn't we create it because we could have gone to tag and hold like the state of Mississippi, so we tried to design our own?
That was part of it. The other,
So it would be something worse?
well, part of the real problem that actually started coming up was the county ordinances. Okay, we have 67 counties, and there were basically going to be 67 different ordinances, including one that does still have a tag and hold, and it's 3 days.
Ben said it 3 days with you? Because you got grandfathered in,
Yeah, so, you know, the objective was to basically get rid of having the possibility of 67 different ways of enforcing it. So, go ahead, sir.
We're dealing with this issue all over the country and jurisdictions everywhere. And I'm curious, why is the initial assumption that the scrapyards got this bad? How do we get to that?
Okay. I knew that was going to come up eventually. In Florida, you're under statute 538. And 538 is the we buy golds. Okay, so all the second-hand dealers are in the same statute. Well, 539 is right next to it, and that's all the pawn shops. And they have lumped you in with that group. And that's how that reputation started, at least in this state. Okay? But because bad guys are taking stuff in, and you guys accept it, therefore you're as bad as the pawn shops and the We Buy Golds. Just automatic cop mentality. Okay, you have to understand, 90% of our job is dealing with 10% of the population. And that 10% is the bottom 10%. It's not the cream of the crop. Okay, so we tend to be very pessimistic. Am I correct?
I agree. The one story that comes to mind, I had an officer called me up one day, he was working a case, and he makes the statement, we just need to shut all these scrap yards down. You know, they should have known that that was stolen. And I said, well, please tell me exactly how they should have known it was stolen. Please articulate that. He couldn't do it. I said, so you're just making a blanket statement without all the facts. So I sat there and educated him, explained to him exactly what you guys do. By the time we got off the phone, he's like, oh, okay. I said, you know, you have to understand what they're doing. And this all starts with dialogue, like Rose has talked about and Matt's talked about. It's kind of like the theme of this meeting here. You have to start that dialogue with your local law enforcement agency. And like Rose suggested, if it takes all the businesses in your jurisdiction to, you know, put everything aside, put it aside and say, look, let's all meet. Let's meet wherever it is and have a talk about this. And once you come up with your game plan, go talk to the agency and say, look, this is what we want to do. We want to be a part of fixing the problem, okay? You guys are going to do two things. One, it's going to help you build that relationship with law enforcement. Two, it's going to help build a better perception of the industry in your area. Because you're right, it is a problem, okay? People do still think that. And it's only going to be through this dialogue, through seeing the partnerships. And what we like to do in our side of the woods up there is education/enforcement. We like to go out and educate, we like to talk about it, figure out what the problem is, and then once we get to that point, then we'll start enforcement. But we want to make sure everybody's on the same page before we do that. So we don't have this blind enforcement out there that is not fair and equitable across the board. You know, when we enforce something, we want the other scrap yards. If I go to one yard and I enforce something, I want the other yards to feel good about what I did because they know that I'm sticking to my word that I gave them when I've spoken to them. And sometimes they'll call me, other yards that want to be complaints, say, hey, I heard this about this yard, and I'll go check it out. And if it's true, then we deal with it accordingly. Sometimes it might just have a talk with them and say, look, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm seeing, you need to fix this. If it's something so blatant and there's obvious criminal intent, well, that kind of paints us in a corner. The one thing I always tell the businesses in Duval County is like, look, so we want to have a positive relationship with you. I said, and that takes effort on my part and your part. Understand my position, and I'm going to understand your position. Please don't paint me in a corner where I have to enforce the law, okay? I have to come and do this to you. Please do whatever you do with good faith and with the intent to do the right thing. And I think we have a good relationship in Duval County with all of our businesses, and I can't speak, you know, more about the businesses. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I know them on a personal level, and that has worked its way in to my job as well. They've helped me with cases. It's made the partnership with them a whole lot better. And I suggest that you try to walk down that road and get to know your local law enforcement and your other businesses.
Here's the one thing I'm told all across the state, and anybody who wants to raise their hand and tell me differently is fine. All that y'all are asking for is a level playing field. Treat me like you do the other guy. That's it. Am I correct? Okay. It's the same in Canada, I'm hoping? Okay. The one way that I will guarantee you law enforcement cooperation is if you go to them. The one thing that will set them on their heels is if you walk up to their building, you go onto their turf and you go, hey, how can I help you do your job? It freaks them out. Absolutely freaks them out. Okay?
It's disarming.
Because when does a bad guy ever do that, right? So start that way and see what happens. I want to talk to the sergeant of your investigative unit. I want to talk to a supervisor. If you have a small PD that you're in and there's like 14 people, ask for a sergeant or a lieutenant if they have that. You don't have to go directly to the chief, okay, or in my case, the sheriff. Start at a low level. You will get more done at that level than you will having it come down. Because what happens in Whisper Down the Lane? Everybody knows Whisper Down the Lane or telephone? Okay? You say something to this person up here, and by the time it gets to this person down here, it's a mandate. Okay? At which point, the person that comes into your building is not there by choice. Okay? So they're not happy when they show up. But if you start out at our level, and you just go in and talk to somebody, you'll set them on their heels. They won't know what to do. Okay? Go ahead.
Have you used Matrix Network? That's been successful?
It's actually in this, and yes, it has, especially for us. Gary happens to be in the back. I'm not going to put him on the spot because he's had a long week. But we had all the time. It's in my standard thing. In fact, Gary has attended one of my other trainings, and it's definitely part of my standard training for everybody across the state. We had a case just recently with 116 manhole covers that were stolen, and within 45 minutes of an alert coming out, a yard called and said, hey, we got them. Of course, they had already tried to tell us that beforehand, but the detective was off and didn't answer his phone, and a couple other things that fell through the cracks. But all of those were set aside. So we've had a lot of success with it. It's been a statewide success. That's what I'm saying. Gary's done a lot of work in a short time. So it's going to continue, hopefully.
And if I'm jumping into what you're about to just say that, but,
We've been all over what I'm about to.
and part of this and how we replicate, you know, some of the success. Rose, you used the word toolbox, and you said you have a toolbox, you have a toolbox, and, you know, what is it that recyclers need to do to help you besides just going in and introducing themselves? That sounds like that's a key component of how you build these relationships. What other things you know, are in this toolbox that made you such a success, this program is a success?
Well, when someone steals a whole air conditioner and it comes to the scrapyard, it's not gonna look like a whole air conditioner. But law enforcement doesn't know, would, you know, of course to us, like, who wouldn't know what's in an air conditioner? But 99% of people out there don't know what an air conditioner looks like.
Everybody in here
Torn apart.
knows what a clean ACR is, right? Okay. I can tell you I just was in a room yesterday with 60 cops and half of them didn't know what I was talking about.
Exactly. So the toolbox is the aluminum copper radiator, one clean, one dirty, the fin ends, the electric motor, the compressor. You know, we don't bother about the shell with the tin shell so that they know what they're looking for. So, and Polk County has training their, you know, the officers, the deputies on the street. So if, you know, you stop somebody with a whole air conditioner, pieces of stuff, and you see what's in there, if these components are in there, then you need to ask the next question is, where'd they come from? How'd you get it? And the copper is the same way. The people that came into the class yesterday, you know, Matt has all of the different coppers, all the insulateds, and he has it on, in training law enforcement, he has all of those pictures on his presentation. But he has it there for them to hold in their hand and ask questions about. So they have to see what you're talking about. And, you know, they came up, they held it, they looked at it, they asked questions about it. But the thing is, like, for us it's old hat, but for them it's Greek. And so that's what the toolbox is about. And so when they're training new officers every time, you know, it's like, yeah, like, this is what this is, this is what this is. When somebody says this was stolen, this is what this looks like, that's what it was. And so then that's how we started doing the toolboxes, so they have them.
Go ahead, sir. How did I find?
Fun.
Your overhead, educate the people, the officers, how do you fund that?
Well, I'm here voluntarily. I'm not paid to be here. I actually have a passion for this. Having a fraud background and working extensively in that, I can identify with this issue because fraud's a much misunderstood and maligned area. Fun. So y'all are in the same group as far as that goes. But I travel. That's what I do. It's fun. And as far as any other funding, my sheriff has allowed me to just continue to travel, and he'll pay me just duty time. So it's actually coming out of the Polk County taxpayers for me to go educate everybody around us. Because here's the problem, which was explained earlier. If you have a puddle of water in my county and I smack it with my hand, that water's going somewhere, right? So I've got to educate everybody around me so that we keep displacing that until it's got nowhere to go.
In my neck of the woods, my wife's an attorney, and she's the president for the area, or vice president for the North Florida Bar. So I had an opportunity. I go out there and I speak to them to educate the attorneys for the legal side of it. Also, I'll go speak at different homeowners associations. I've got 2 meetings that I'm going to go speak at to help educate them on what they do. The sheriff's office actually has community meetings that I've been asked to come speak to educate just the citizen who these are potential victims. And one of the topics that we talk about is changing the perception of your industry. It's important. They have to understand that you're not the problem, okay? And one of the things I try to help them understand is that absent the people in this room and the ones that aren't here, I don't know where this country would be. You have a vital resource, and they don't understand that because they've not connected the dots. Why? Because it's just not in their thought process. So it's my job as law enforcement to go out there and do that. And when those opportunities present themselves, we do that and explain to them that you guys are a vital part of this economy, a vital part of the community. You clean the area up. There's a lot of things that you guys do that they may not see on the surface. And I tell you, every time I do that and I leave the room, somebody stops and says, "Oh, I never knew that about that. I never knew that." It's stuff like that that has to continue to happen to help them understand, changing the perception of your industry to everybody.
Yeah, Mike.
Don't feel like the Lone Ranger, though. 2 years ago, Eve and I sat in the state senator's office in Minneapolis, or in St. Paul, Minnesota legislature, talking about the mental theft bill that they were proposing. And he sat there and listened. We talked back and forth. Then he made the statement, well, 70 to 80% of all the material that comes to you guys is stolen. It just flabbergasted. So the assumptions are just rampant out there, and that's what our
Well, can I add to that? Because that actually, I'm sorry, Matt.
Go ahead.
This is something, this came up, this sort of thing, a comment like that came up at an FRE meeting, okay? And I'm going to use pawn as the example, okay? How many people in the room have all the serial numbers of their TVs, VCRs, all their electronics written down? Did you look around? Okay, I'm going to use you. You're one, okay? I'm talking about pawn.
Yeah,
Personal stuff in your house. How many of you actually have written down your serial numbers? Okay, 1 out of how many we have in a room, okay? Well, let's say we find yours. That's the reportable number, all right? That's the number they're using. That doesn't mean anything. Those numbers are those are fluff. It doesn't mean anything, okay? The reality of it is, you're not out there purposely trying to buy stolen stuff, okay? Are you going to buy stuff that's stolen? Absolutely, we know that. Is there any intent to do that? No, but how do you bridge that? We have to have these partnerships, these relationships to stop that, okay? Not everything that comes through the door is stolen, and we have to change that with them. Yeah, they're going to make comments like that. I've heard that so many times, but they can't, it's a number they can't prove. It's just not, it's not there. When you start pointing to all these other legitimate reasons why that material is sitting on your yard, it throws that number completely out of whack. It's just not true.
Go ahead, sir.
The reason why I have all my stuff written down is because we actually got robbed. The insurance company said, "Hey, there's nothing we can do. You don't have any serial numbers. We ain't gonna be able to find this. So the next time we replace everything,
Yeah.
we wrote every serial number down."
Well, I had heard that because somebody mentioned, like in a pawn shop, this percentage of it ends up in a pawn shop. Well, that's the percentage of it that's actually, reported. I mean, you can't really, those numbers are just, I don't like those statistics, that kind of stuff, when people talk like that, because it's so inaccurate and it leads people down the wrong road. They need to understand the good things that you guys do, because it far outweighs the amount of theft that's coming into your yard.
Yeah. Now, at the same time, as far as doing the descriptive information, one of the fights that we have on our side of the world is actually having them describe the item correctly. Okay? Oh, they had copper wire stolen. Okay. They had 500 feet of copper wire stolen. Okay. And so they had a TV. Once you start to push that into somebody's mind in our end of the world, the light goes on. Oh, you'll never find that. That's correct. If they at least say I had 600 feet of 500 MCM, it's telephone or it's this or it's that, I now have something in mind because I know electricians speak. Okay, at that point I can turn around and say, we're looking for bare bright, it's probably going to be cut in these lengths, it's either going to be burned or stripped, it should be about this many pounds. Okay, it may be all together, it may be pulled apart, we don't know. At that point you can look for it. Okay, but again with the electronic reporting now, I can look for it myself. I don't have to tie you up anymore. Okay, I don't know how many of you have electronic reporting, but we used to call Rose, I know I call her 4 or 5 times a day, hey, you got this, hey, you got this, hey, you got this. Those 5-10 minutes of her time, even from her staff, bogs you down. The electronic reporting makes me look it up. Okay, now it's my time. You guys can keep rolling. So it definitely is a help all the way around. Who taught me? Me. I am How did we get to this? It's an interesting question. I don't like not knowing. As a law enforcement officer, I'm very inquisitive, and as such, I want to know what I'm talking about to the fullest extent. So I went out and I taught myself. I picked on Rose, I picked on other yards, I picked on anybody that I could pick on to get information. I've picked on electricians, I've worked with TECO, I've worked with AT&T. You name a company, I've probably taken something from them, okay? And became very good at what I do. Now, my father, Rose, made it to where I know I'm not going to be around forever, so I got to leave it better than I got it, which is why I started teaching everybody else. Does that help?
How do we replicate that in areas that don't have people like you?
Well, yeah, I'd like to just Xerox, man. That'd be neat.
It's an idea.
Oh, it's cloned today. Oh, there's actually a process for it now. I'm sorry. That was that new technology I was talking about, faxes and stuff. You just send me wherever through this. Anyway, again, approach your law enforcement. Approach your state attorney's office. Find your local thing like FleaProof. We're online. You can find us rather easily. Our website's not the best, but at least it has the board members on there. They're from various areas across the state and various agencies. We now have somebody with Department of Ag that's on our board. Okay, so find somebody in your state that has that organization. You can do it without leaving your office, and you can go ahead and make contact with them that way. If nothing else, get with your state law enforcement to see if they have anything of the like, and then roll it down from there. So there's all kinds of things. By the way, would anybody find this to be interesting coming in your front door? This actually happened in Hillsborough County. Okay, you can't accept this now, but they did then.
What is that?
Radiator.
That's from a Caterpillar grader for grading the roadways. They went overnight and took it and brought it to the recycler the next morning. So, but he's coming in on a bike, so I would believe that it's legitimate. Yeah. All right. One of the things that we do, Hillsborough is the one that started it. Orange County's doing it mostly from the recycler side, not from the law enforcement side, is they hold quarterly meetings with law enforcement and recyclers in the same room. I can tell you that when these started, they were adversarial. It wasn't us versus them. Okay, I don't know if you're doing them up.
We are.
Okay, when you started, were they adversarial?
They were. I think we have, one of them's in the room actually. We actually had a meeting when we first got the task force together, and it was a lot of questions, which I fully expected. And there were some that were in the room that were very adversarial. When we went out and did one-on-ones with them, it was, you could feel the chill when you pulled into the lot. You could just feel it. That's our problem to deal with. The thing that I told my chain of command, I still believe this, is that, our law that we had prior to July 1st, we really weren't enforcing it. So it's really difficult for us to walk in here all of a sudden and, with our stick raised saying, oh, we need this new law. You weren't even doing anything with the first one you had. Okay? So we had to bridge that, we had to punch through that adversarial sort of dynamic that existed. And the only way that happens is us showing up, even if I have nothing else to do, but just stop by, hey, how's it going? How are you doing today? And just have an offline conversation. Build a good relationship with them. I've been lucky that on my agency that they've afforded me the opportunity to do that. I can't speak for agencies for wherever you're at. JSO has been very good and gracious to me to give me the opportunity to go out there and spend that time with the yards to do that, and it's paid huge dividends. And I hope that they continue, and it looks like they will. My understanding is this is a big thing for our sheriff. He really likes his scrap task force, and we're going to continue to move it on as long as they'll let us.
Okay. Just make sure there were any other questions so far? Okay. I work with Crime Stoppers, and we've got the Copper Theft Task Force. If we have a particular area, such as new construction, we have those signs that we throw out there, and we'll get tips directly through that. We've had different companies donate stuff. We have a large mining operation in our area owned by Mosaic. They'll give us drag line. We've had the telephone company give us spools and a trailer of wire to leave on the side of the road with GPS in it. We've had all kinds of things that we can do. So again, the key is to go ahead and start developing those relationships. You got to look at who the stakeholders are. Whose stuff are you buying that you may not want to buy or is continuously getting stolen? Okay? Who's not minding their shop and bringing their trouble to your doorstep? Start contacting them. Again, your phone company and utilities are primary. All right? One of the things we did with the utilities in our area is we're trying to get them to spray paint their water meters and things like that, specific colors. Okay? We've got one city that spray paints blue. Got another one that spray paints things orange because backflow valves are a continuous problem. Once it's got the paint on there, I know all I have to do is call that utility and say, hey, we've got one, figure out where it came from. And they may already be out servicing an area and say this is where it came from. If it comes in and they've already ground off serial numbers or whatever, how tough is it to put that back into where it came from? Okay, so it's those kind of simple things. Rose has a whole thing as far as the spray paints and all of that for the ACRs.
Yeah. We made stencils where you spray paint your ACRs and like your address on it. So it you know, at the time they did steal it, then at least you could have it marked, put your company name on it. So we've been trying to educate people to do that. And there's also the ultraviolet light paint. And what's this? Stenciling, ultraviolet light paint, and then just regular marking of the name. And you know, our point is if you have it, we try to train them if they have it identifiable, even if they try to take it off. At least that if they can't take it all off, it's going to show that you've tried to take it off, and it's all about identification at the end of the day for prosecution.
Tell them about the wire that you found for hemp.
Oh, wait, you mean the guys that came in with all that wire?
No. The new wire the Hamp's trying to work on getting them to buy.
Oh, they know about Southwire.
Okay.
Southwire's ID company.
Well,
Yellen.
I was just gonna say, when you say the stencils, are you providing the property stakeholder stencils?
No, we're showing them how to make them, to make their own stencils and start spray painting their name on everything. Actually, Hamp with Mosaic is the one that showed me that toolkit, and then we've just taken it across the state.
Just you or Florida Recyclers?
Florida Recyclers, within our training and talking to people and.
So that's a component of your training for the others as well as marketing and.
Right. Yellen.
Well, in Seminole County, or I don't know if it's everywhere, we can't buy an individual aluminum copper radiator unless they bring the receipt where they bought a new aluminum copper, a new air conditioner and did their own replacement.
Yeah, that's the proof of ownership.
yeah, it's reasonable.
Is that statewide?
The statute actually for Florida says that.
You act like it's easy, but it's, you have to have a letter, or Mrs. Jones at 1325, I do all her handyman work, and she authorized me
Right.
to come sell her air conditioner.
The way the statute talks The way the statute talks about the reasonable proof of ownership for the 20 regulated restricted items is just reasonable. If I replace the AC at my house, I don't have the receipt from an AC from 20 years ago. I can just bring the receipt in that said it was replaced. Right. I bring the new one in and it's good. Okay. Rose has a letter that FLEPRU has gone over, and we endorse if they'll go out and have that person sign that, and they'll put their driver's license number and stuff on there, then that's good. Okay. But again, other jurisdictions don't acknowledge that, and they want specific things. Okay.
I just wanted to mention that because when you said about the form, tying it in with the form, there's restricted, regulated, and there's regulated and restricted, regulated. So there's all kinds of things that roads, I'm sure, or FRA, I don't go to the meetings anymore, but that they've enacted that have further proved that the product we're buying is not stolen.
That's correct. And
That's what we try to do. You don't,
right.
You don't try to prove it's stolen. You gotta prove it's not stolen to buy it.
Well, again, in 08, the statute was written against the recyclers because that was the overall mentality. The statute last year, we worked in cooperation with everybody as far as all the stakeholders involved to try and make sure that no one was 100% happy, because we all know if no one's 100% happy, then it's a good law, because no side's right. Okay, everybody's unhappy about something. Believe me, I'm unhappy I didn't get number 21. Rose, what was number 21?
Batteries, Matthew, I'll never live that down.
She won't live that down because I'm still mad. Now that's the number one thing in recycling that's stolen in Florida. Okay? Oh yeah, number one with a bullet. Our stolen batteries actually went up. Everything else dropped off to almost nothing.
Well, that's the most exciting
So.
middle of the year.
Well, there you go.
It is, that's probably one that, this is such a great opportunity to talk about that one, because I know that about 2 months ago, our local media did a big story about these batteries because of where they were stealing them from. Specifically, they were stealing them from barricades at construction sites on roads. Think about that for a second. So now you have a road closure or lane closure, and you've got these criminals out here stealing 6 to 8 golf cart batteries off of a road construction sign. Now imagine a family full of kids and mom and dad at nighttime driving down said road, and there's no signage.
Yeah.
You see how ugly that gets? So very ugly. So this is one of those opportunities where I think that the industry could really be a big player in this to say, you know, hey, these guys are really want to help it, you know, to get rid of the criminal.
At the same time, bringing it back to scrap theft alert, we had the law go into effect in July of last year. Over the course of the summer break, every battery from every solar crossing sign for the entire school district of Lakeland was taken. There was over 300 batteries, 300 different spots rather. Put the alert out within an hour. Somebody says, yeah, they've been bringing them in all summer. We were wondering what was up with that. Bad guy went to jail. Okay, and they went to multiple yards, so no one yard would have known. Okay, so it's possible.
But the batteries, so anyway, I forget what it's the Construction Builders Association, isn't it?
Somebody.
Yeah.
So they want to add 21 back onto the law. So since we wrote the law collectively, they can't do anything without our agreement. So we've negotiated 3 batteries or more would be under our restricted list. So they didn't have any problem with that. But what was nice was they knew that they had to have us to get it going. And so we had a big, we had a conference call about it and we discussed it. And so we heard both sides of the story and what we felt, and we understood where they were coming from, but it's a safety issue. Like, is it gonna be on our conscience that if somebody gets killed, then it's all our fault that we didn't have batteries, gets to that. So, but we not only, we negotiated the decision. We negotiated what the number was and what we were willing to live with, and they accepted that without any problem. So it does make a difference when you come from the proactive side of it. And Matthew, you were right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody foreseen this coming as far as somebody putting a spin on it like that, but that's just what I've heard. Especially when you see the news articles that are out there about it. Obviously you guys have nothing to do with that. Nothing.
The old joke of a bad guy will take whatever's not nailed down is definitely true. And Now we have proof of that, if we didn't have enough already. So,
Well, I think even the good guys are stealing now too, because there's so much unemployment and people living on the street who always had houses before.
yep, people are turning to it. But what
Their
they're,
family don't do anything.
yep, but again, what this also shows specifically is that the bad guys are knowing what the rules are too, and they're going to the one thing that wasn't on there that they can still have easy access to, which then leads you to the other stakeholders, which is transportation, who paid no attention to anything that was going on and said, oh, that doesn't affect us, we're going to let it be. And yet they still don't lock their stuff up, they still don't guard it, they don't secure it, they don't anything, and then y'all take the brunt of it because you're accepting it. Okay, well, whose fault is it really? Okay, so that's where talking to all these folks has something to do with it, as far as you've got to look at everybody involved as a total picture. You can't just deal with law enforcement. You can't just deal with the state attorney. You can't just deal with elected officials. You've basically got to go after everybody. Okay.
When did electronic submissions start?
July of last year.
All right, last year when all the batteries were being stolen.
Right after that.
But you really couldn't pick up like the submission, just wait till the scrap market picked up for it?
Well, they weren't reported until school went into session, because the school board doesn't actually turn those on until about 2 weeks before the school goes up. So therefore, there's nobody checking on them.
Yeah, for us, it started in Duval County where it started popping up is that we started getting repeat incidents with the same victim. And then when we do our crime analysis, it keeps popping up barricades. And of course, you also have the victim calling the sheriff's office, what are you going to do about this? I'm getting tore up. I mean, they were getting ate up. So, you know, what we did is, first of all, we educated them that, look, you need to secure your property better. You need to mark them. We helped them understand what they need to do, and it's been pretty successful. And I know that this particular business has gone statewide to make sure that they do that, mark their batteries. At least that's what I've been told to do. You know, to do something proactive to keep it from getting stolen. The responsibility is just not on us. They have a responsibility too to secure their stuff.
They're actually now marking and GPSing several of their batteries. They'll put a decoy battery in there with a GPS in it.
Yeah.
But they called Kelly, and Kelly called me and said, you're going to get a phone call from this guy. He called me, and I regurgitated everything Kelly said. And I said, you've got to mark it. And I know, I already heard that from detectives.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad they're doing it. But we worked together. We gave that man the exact same message. Both of us did.
Okay.
What chances would there be in this state for law enforcement to join together with the industry on legislation, for example, that starts putting the onerous on the other stakeholders that you can tell them that they're not doing? Market property, legislation that gives them a little responsibility.
That's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have any luck. I don't think you're going to have any luck at all with that, because the legislators are elected by the community, and the community wants as many laws on them as you want on you. Okay, so to say if you don't mark it, you can't report it stolen, that would be great for us, because our crime rate would go way down. Okay. If you leave your car unlocked, don't call us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's a very nice thing that we would really love to have happen, but I never see it happening. Go ahead.
Those lists of restricted items, Florida has a lot of other states that have similar things, and they call it special purpose items, and they call it restricted, and they call it all different things. And generally, there's two criteria, and as recyclers, we always worry about everybody piling on to that list. It should be something that's commonly stolen, and it should be something that, if the seller brings it to you, they should be able to provide some sort of proof of ownership. So when you start getting into other areas, like batteries is a tough one, because so many people have batteries to recycle, it's hard to show proof of ownership. We've seen other states where they'll have these broad categories like construction materials, which could be really anything under the sun. So I think recyclers are, by nature, a little bit wary of adding too many things to that list, because it makes it hard for us to be able to train our people on what to look for, what not.
I'm hearing recyclers are much like law enforcement in that they're pessimistic. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Again, Florida is unique in the fact that by us working together, everything in our restricted group are things that normal people wouldn't have unless it's their actual course of business. And in which case, if you're dealing business to business, that's a whole different thing than general public. Okay, so I'm in agreement. Construction material. Why didn't they have a bin shipped to the property anyway, and y'all just pick the bin up and take it back to your property? Okay, if I'm bringing in a pickup truck and suddenly it's chock full of something and it just doesn't line up, our guys will call us. Okay, so.
The operative phrase with what you're talking about using in your example is the totality of the circumstances. If I have a guy that's unemployed coming in and he's got 25 batteries, that's called a red flag and that's a clue for us. Okay, however, if it's a business owner that comes in with 25 batteries, well, you can see the difference there. So as an investigator, when I look at stuff, I look at the totality of the circumstances, and those are going to be the mitigating factors of whether or not I need to focus on that guy or not. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that, and I've had this conversation with several recyclers, is that sometimes the perception is with the new law is that, well, I'm doing your job now. This is what you should be doing. And I try to tell them that, no, it's my job to do the investigation. We're simply asking you to get some additional information to give me a lead to catch the criminal, okay? Because let me tell you how that works. We'll use that oath of ownership, okay? If somebody comes in and says, he's got an air conditioning, and he says, well, I work for this company ABC, and I go in there and I reinstall, and because they have to give follow-up information for us to do, okay? Well, that's got to be a solid story. So when I go out there and get that oath of ownership and I go call it up and say, that's not true. You know what that is? That's an element to the crime, okay? And I'm going to use that as a building block to charge this individual for false verification of ownership. So you're actually helping me gain more evidence to catch that individual. So if you look at it like that, you're not doing my job, but you're definitely giving me the tools to really go after this guy. Because that's what that is. It becomes a piece of evidence. So look, this is why this guy had intent to defraud the business, you, and to hide his crime. He created this fraudulent letter here. Those are all factors, mitigating factors for getting a conviction on somebody.
Go ahead, sir.
We have a phrase at work called JDLR. Just don't look right. It's just a thing we got. But if it doesn't look right, we take it. Like, we had a customer bring in rolls of wire from his uncle.
I had that same story once.
It didn't look right, so we took it, we set it off to the side and dumped it. Well, next thing you know, the next day later, he brings in more. This time it came from his brother. And I asked the boss, I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? Just throw it in that dumpster. We'll wait. There's no police report yet. Well, that went on for a while. Well, sure enough, hey, this is so-and-so telephone company. We're looking for coils of this wire. We have it. Well, how much do you have? A lot. I mean, this guy went over probably 30 grand of wire from this phone company. And we've had it the whole time, but because the telephone company didn't report it, they didn't know it was missing. Or they knew it was missing and didn't report it to the proper law enforcement.
But see, that's where having your contact with local law enforcement or doing a backwards alert through scrap theft alert, hey, we got somebody selling this stuff, we're not real sure.
We did that, and
Wow.
the local police department, sheriff's department said, nobody said anything. Well, the thing is this kid was breaking into this warehouse, middle of the night, whatever, putting another lock on there, and warehouse, nobody really went in there, unless they needed something. And we had a storm, and that's the only reason why they did their missing stuff, because the storm went through and said, where's our material? Well,
We've had similar stuff in Duval County happen, and Micah right there, he's made me look like a superstar to my agency because he'll call me, hey, look at this. Look, you need to check out whatever. And it's netted some positive results. And I have that kind of relationship with several of the businesses. I had Comcast, very similar situation. They had a ton of wire that got stolen. the business call. I asked him if I could share this story with him because it's relative to what you said. They had a bunch of wires stolen. They called me up one day and said, hey, this girl keeps coming in here with all this wires, a whole bunch. I don't know what's wrong with it. There's something, and it wasn't a restricted item. But there's something odd here. I said, all right, I'll stop by. So I stopped by, cut a little snip of it, and looked at the wire and his little, name on the side of it. So I just Googled it, found it. The supplier was out of Ithaca, New York. So I called them up because the amount of wire they had, somebody was going to have to order a bunch of wire because there's a lot of it here. So I tracked it all the way back down to Comcast. Lo and behold, there was a report written by Comcast, but no suspect information. So a lot of times the stuff will get reported and there's no suspect information. So because of that relationship with the scrapyard, I was able to connect the dots and go full circle. End of the day, I ended up making 3 felony arrests on these individuals, and the victim couldn't be happier. They think the scrap industry walks on water in Duval County because of that. That was Comcast. They're very happy about that. And it's all because of that relationship. And I've had the same experience with Micah where he works at. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff you have to have.
Go ahead, sir.
We had a detective in our area, we had some people stealing stuff, and I talked to him and told him for somebody to go to jail, that they had to get 15 or 16 felony charges, or they had to get so many points. Is that so?
Well, sentencing guidelines deal with points, and I'll go with yes, depending upon jurisdiction on that.
So if the state attorney's office and the judge don't prosecute these people, what do we do?
We're doing everything we can in the meantime.
Who's going to get to the judges and the prosecutors to do something to these people and not keep turning the loose?
Again,
Back out on the street.
that's where us going to them helps, but it's also where you're going to have to actually talk with them also. I believe that, okay? And if you didn't, you wouldn't be here, okay? So, but yes, that's an issue, and both sides face that same issue, okay?
So is that county by county that law? I mean, because it's so many points, like, points against your driver's license or something.
As far as the sentencing guidelines, no, it's pretty much the same everywhere.
It's pretty much the same. But it goes back to the theme here is that, if you think about your county, I'm sorry, what county are you with? Let's take Seminole County. I don't know how many yards are in Seminole County. Let's say that all of you get together, all of you, the yards, the businesses, and you have a conversation. And at some point, you go and you talk to law enforcement. Get law enforcement to come to a meeting. Okay, well, now you got that party involved. Well, then what you do is you invite you invite the state attorney. You invite the division chief. You invite a judge. You invite these people, officers of the court to come and sit and understand what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you how that works. Because when they're sitting on the bench, when they get a case that comes across their desk, they're more familiar with it. It's all about establishing that connectivity with all the parties involved. Okay? They don't know your perspective unless you tell them. And how that happens is for you to build these coalitions with law enforcement and with the legal community to make it happen. It's no different than think about like DUIs. DUIs went on a similar path. Before, I have a buddy of mine who went to high school. His dad had 17 DUIs. That's unheard of now. This is when I was a little kid. 17. Okay, well, look what happened. People started building coalitions. They started getting everybody involved. And look where we're at now. You get 2 and you're done. Okay, so that's the sort of path that needs to take place.
Go ahead, Rose.
Well, I was going to say that that's our next step. We were talking about that in our mental theft training because a lot of the law enforcement was very upset about their district attorneys not billing. So I asked them to, help us. That would be our next step, is to start getting the district attorneys to our yards so that they understand. So, it's like we've made it this far. Now that's our next bridge we're going to cross.
Who have you had come to your yard so far?
And the district attorneys?
As far as anybody that's come to your yard as an elected official?
Well, let's see. We've had all our legislators come. We've had our senator come. Our sheriff has come. Different law enforcement officers have come. They train the dogs in our yard. Whenever they're bored at night, they come and look through the yard because they're on our little camera. Different kinds of training they come into the yard for. We have the fire department across the street. They come in for training. We welcome everybody. I just got the city of Lakeland, which I didn't tell you, Matt. Now they have a metal theft guy, and they came and asked me to train them. So they're gonna be bringing a team over for me to train them and giving them a toolkit. So, we're getting there.
How did you get the sheriff to come to your
Oh,
yard?
I got my sheriff. Our Sheriff Grady Judd is really pretty much of a visionary, and what he does is he goes to the different associations. Everybody has fundraisers, and he offers a day with Grady, lunch with Grady, and so you bid on that. So, and of course, he has his minimal amount. So I go to this one of the women organizations that I belong to, and so I buy him every year for lunch. And even though we're friends with him, and my brother went to school with him, we have a good relationship with him, and you know, actually he trained in our yard. He did a stakeout in our yard when he was a rookie. And so, I mean, those relationships, but you know, we're busy. He's the sheriff. So this is an opportunity for him to be all hours for 1 hour. So 1 hour a year, he is all ours. And when he comes to the yard, he shakes all of our employees' hands, our customers' hands. He says, you know, thank you for being a good citizen. They are just flipped over him. Like, I can't believe the sheriff's really here. And it's really incredible. So we do that.
But here's the thing, you get to contribute to a civic organization and you can write that off as a donation, but at the same time you have somebody who's the head of something now trapped at your yard to understand your industry, okay? Most of the people trying to pass the laws or enforce the laws haven't set foot on your property or anybody's property like yours, okay? As a result, they have the image where 70% of the stuff coming in there is stolen, all right? If you bring them in there and they start to see it's just mom and pop and Joe Blow coming in just trying to get rid of stuff and make a few bucks to have food for Friday, then it starts to change all of that.
And to that point, and your remark earlier regarding gathering information to help with the prosecution, we're not adverse to helping with that sort of thing. While we don't want to be the law enforcement, we're not adverse to that. But by the same token, we also fight every day to get people to come to us to bring us material. So we don't want to treat everybody like a criminal and make them feel uncomfortable. There are people that just aren't real fond of police for some reason.
I agree. I have no idea why that might be.
I get
We're so
stared
nice.
at every day when I go on one.
I have yet to walk into a grocery store of any kind and have some mother go, you better behave or he's going to take you to jail. Okay? I mean, every single day they see a uniform, a badge, or a gun, the kid's going to jail. Do what I say or else. So I can't imagine why people don't like us. But Rose, you've dealt with me for a while. Have I forced your people to ask anything they weren't normally asking before?
No.
Have I changed anything other than the actual form per se as far as how you take stuff?
No.
That was a Matlock moment.
It was. I feel like
It was.
Stan, I'm on
Dun
the
dun dun. Okay. It can be done without inconveniencing folks. Okay. But again, it's not until you start working together that that starts. Okay. Again, I can tell you it's pervasive as far as us versus them. That's the first hurdle to get over. As Kelly and I both said when we started having meetings and going out and talking to people, it was very much an us versus them, and they were adversarial conversations going on. Why don't you do this? Why don't you enforce this? Well, why do you accept this? When I ask for this, why don't you have it? It's a matter of who in here understands Czechoslovakian? Anybody? Good, because I don't either, okay? So you have to break that language barrier is my point here, okay? I don't know everything that you do. I still don't know everything that you do, okay? Eventually I will because I'm like that, all right? But you have to find that willingness to go out and break that barrier. It's not until you get across that threshold and you find somebody that's willing to listen and start going at it that they'll then spread that to the next level.
Anybody else? Because I have to wrap up. We've gone over.
I want to say thanks to not all the officers we need or like you to.
We recruit from the human race. So as soon as we eliminate that problem, we'll be good.
Under the Florida legislation, who's all required to do the electronic reporting? License dealers, valley
Anybody under 538 and 539, which is going to be pawns, secondhand, and secondary metals recyclers, are mandatory electronic reporting. Okay? And if they're not licensed, that's a felony for the secondary metals recyclers only. It's a misdemeanor for a secondhand dealer. Because again, that group is anti-law enforcement, where y'all are pro-law enforcement, and literally said if somebody's in this line of work, we want them in jail. They can afford the license. They can afford a computer. If they can't, get out of the business, okay? So again, that's another stark difference between the two groups, even though you're under the same statute.
Jim, take our last question.
Quick question. You guys mentioned secondhand people or something from secondary copies. If you get a notice on college that says, my refrigerator was stolen, my window air conditioner was stolen, my hot water heater, do you contact us first, or do you go to secondhand people first?
Because it's electronically reported, I check both at the same time. Again, it also depends on the age of the item and what the rest of the circumstances on the case are. A lot of times what we find are renters that are doing that. It's another family squabble, something like that as far as large appliances. Window AC units, I found them mostly at secondhand shops rather than recyclers.
Anybody else? Last question. Well, do y'all, okay, this is my last, I get to ask a question. Do you feel that was worth it? Did you get anything out of it?
There's